Today, I'm going to give you my 4 biggest takeaways for starting a music production career and things that I wish I would have known that would have saved me a lot of time, effort, and headache when I had gotten started. So let's dive in. The first thing is that progress is more like walking upstairs than essentially going in a straight line. And I know that doesn't make sense to a lot of people starting out. You think, oh, if I practice something every day, I'm going to get a little bit better, or every month I'm going to get a little bit better. And it's going to be like a nice straight line of progress. And then at some point, you're going to get pretty good at this. Well, that's not true at all, because that's not how the human brain works. What actually happens is you work really hard at something, you make some progress, you're like, cool, awesome, all right, I'm getting good at this. And then you kind of realize you're like, oh wow, I have a long way to go. And you get frustrated and you plateau for a while and you're stuck and you're grinding and it feels like nothing you do gets you any better. And this is totally normal. But then one day you wake up and suddenly you have this massive bump in progress. Like it just clicks. It's like suddenly I can hear 2K and everything, and I'm EQing it out, and it's so obvious to me, but a month ago I couldn't hear it at all. So you're gonna find in your career that you have a lot of time where you're going sideways, or you feel like you're not getting better for 3 months, 6 months, it could even be 2 years. And then suddenly one day, boom, you have a massive explosion in progress. So that's how the human brain works. It's like you're building all these neural connections, and it's frustrating and it's difficult. That frustration, that feeling like you're not getting better, or you suck and everybody else is so much better than you, like that's totally normal. You're gonna go through that. You're going to experience, and it's important to experience that. And guess what? One day you're just gonna suddenly, boom, up to the moon, and you're gonna make that next leap, and then you're gonna go through that all again. I've been doing this professionally for over 20 years, and yes, that happens to me as well. I mean, I had a plateau a couple of years ago where I was literally stuck for like 2.5 years, and I felt like I could not get better, and I had to redo my entire paradigms of the way that I approached audio, approached mixing, and then that led to a quantum leap in my own progress, as well as the type of clientele I was getting. So don't be frustrated if you feel like that. It's totally natural. Embrace the struggle. That's part of the fun. My next biggest takeaway is buy nice or buy twice. And this is something where, how do I put it? You're going to learn the hard way. So it's better to pay attention to this now and do it right, because gear is expensive and you want to get the most bang for your buck and you want to get results. Now there are people that'll be like, oh, it's the ear, not the gear. And yeah, there's of course some truth to that, but to totally discount gear and say that gear doesn't matter is garbage, period. Okay, so let's talk about buying gear. Now, the thing is, if you're producing at home, you're starting your career, you don't have a lot of money, like, hey, I've been there, buying gear sucks, okay? You got to sacrifice a lot. I can tell you all kinds of stories. But I will tell you this, when you start out, you can put your money in a few key pieces and get a lot of great results. So then you can focus on your skills and not focus on your gear. So for example, investing in a high quality interface, mic preamp, microphone, right? The ability to do 2 channels of really high quality audio is super important, because if you got to record drums, for example, you can always go rent out a studio instead of doing a $100,000 room build and going and dropping $100 grand in gear to be able to have a nice drum room. It's a lot easier to just pay somebody $500 a day to go record drums and do it right and not have to buy all of that equipment. I would highly recommend, if you're gonna look at gear, don't get stuff that's mid-tier or low-tier, because you're just going to want to upgrade. So for example, I got a producer in the building. He's a younger kid. He's a couple of years into the game, and he really wanted a Sony C800G. Now that microphone cost $12,000. So he saved up all year. He worked his butt off doing rappers one after another for months and months and months. He got on the waiting list for a Sony. And instead of going and buying some knockoff clone or something that he was going to be disappointed with eventually and then want to upgrade, he just bought the mic he wanted, which was the C800. Then he bought a 251. Then he bought the hand-wired Neve, and he just bought all of the best gear. And guess what? He doesn't have to think about gear anymore, because it's all paid off now. He knows that he's got the best vocal chain that you can find anywhere in the world in any studio, no matter the size, the budget, the scope, etc. All up, and it's his, he owns it, and he never has to think about it again. Now, the interesting thing about that story is, as soon as this producer came in and got all of this great equipment, his clientele exploded, because the quality of his work literally overnight increased. His artists noticed it. They told everybody else. Suddenly, he's got every rapper in town coming to him, and he's just crushing it. The guy is so booked, he can barely keep up with the work. So that, in my opinion, is the best way to buy gear. Save up, buy the thing that you want, right? And make sure that you really want it, that you're going to get the most value on. Invest in that, use it, go make money, have a career with it, and don't think about it again. Instead of buying something that's kind of halfway between, and then buying something again that's a little bit better, and then buying something that you finally want. That's a lot of flipping and selling, and you're going to lose a lot more money. It's better to just save up. The next major takeaway comes down to a question that I get asked a lot: is acquiring clients for your studio. How do you do it? And my answer is simple. focus on value. Now, what does that mean? It's really, really hard to go get a new client. For example, you got to go to a show, you got to go talk to a band. There's a lot of things. I could talk for 2 hours about acquiring clients. But let's just say once you get somebody in the studio to finally give you a shot, if you just do the minimum, guess what? Their chances of coming back, unless your work is super sick, is pretty low, because there's a lot of people that can do okay work out there. There's a few people that can do good work, and there's a very, very few people that are going to do phenomenal work. And all of those people work on really, really, really huge bands. If you want to stand out when you're starting out, what you need to do is you need to focus on delivering the most amount of value for the artist. So they come in. First off, do not nickel and dime them. Be like, oh, well, if you want to record with me, it's going to be this an hour. If you need your CD, I'm going to have to back up your masters. I'm going to charge you a hard drive fee and a storage fee. People do all kinds of stuff like that. I didn't like any of that when I started out. Instead, what I would just do is be like, here's my day rate. We're going to do a song. Let's spend a day doing it. Boom. There's no surprises. If I've got to work an extra 30 minutes or an hour and a half on a day, that's fine. And yes, some people may take advantage of that a little bit, but you can always say, hey, look, I'm tapped out today. We're going to need more time on this, etc. The key to working with clients and artists in the studio is to communicate upfront. It's to give them a lot of value in excess of what they're paying for. And then guess what? They leave your studio and they go and they tell people, they say, look, check out our new demo. We're so proud of this, or this new single we just did. Wow, this sounds great. Who recorded this? They say your name. How was it working with that person? I've heard of them, but I've never worked with them. Oh, they were amazing. They went so far above and beyond. I can't recommend them enough. I mean, I'd rather have feedback like that, I don't know about you, than, well, I worked with this person, but they were kind of stingy. They were awkward. They were a bad hang. They upcharged us for every little thing. And we feel like we got good quality, but like just the vibe wasn't right. You know what I mean? What kind of feedback do you want? So if you can give them more value, meaning when they show up to your studio, you hustle. You set up cables fast. You set up microphones fast. You take the time to really interact, really get to know the artist. Just dig in and show that you care about their music. That is going to go a long way for getting people to want to work with you and spreading word of mouth, which ultimately is your best source of clientele. It's so much easier to have artists out there telling people about how great that you are to work with, as opposed to going up and hitting up people cold and being like, hey, come work with me. Oh, we already work with this person. Oh, well, come work with me instead. You know, that's hard to do. That's a tough sell. It's much easier to just, oh, wow, I heard this, that this person did. We need to check that out and we need to go work with this person because clearly they're amazing and I hear nothing but great things about them. So when you're in the studio, focus 100% of your effort on value. Do not be afraid to give more than you're being paid for. This philosophy has kept me in business and growing my business for over 20 years. And I highly, highly, highly recommend you adhere to it. And my final tip that I wish I knew, and this is because I came up in the Midwest where my competition was the local studio down the street, and we were all vying for the same local and regional bands, was to collaborate, not to compete. Now, this is an interesting mentality because a lot of people that own individual studios and maybe work on like a local market type of demographic are going to be like, well, I'm going to lose money. Well, that's not necessarily true. So hear me out. All of the biggest records that you listen to are done through collaboration. Now, the counter argument to that is, well, I don't have the budgets, blah, blah, blah. Hear me out. Hold on with me for a second. I've noticed that as producers go up through the ranks, usually they start out doing everything by themselves. And yes, you can be a good mixer and you can be a good producer and a good mastering engineer and a good writer and a good editor. But if you want to be a great at something, you really, really need to focus. And if you want to go from great to best in class or best in the world or one of the top, you really, really, really need to focus. Chris Lord-Alge doesn't master his own mixes. He doesn't think about, editing drums. He mixes, period. That's all he does. Okay? So if you want to be great, you need to focus on one thing. So what happens is when you start up, you're building clientele, you become a jack of all trades, you get good at a lot of different things, but you're going to reach a point in your career where it's kind of like you're kind of at the top of the local apex and regional apex. And it's like if you want to break into the national level, you need something to pop, you need something to break. And you'll find that a lot of the artists that are on the national level, everything is done with teams. So a lot of the producers, they have mixers, they have mastering engineers, they have editors, they have co-writers, they have top liners, they have programmers that work on their teams and different people that they source things to when they cut up their budgets and they farm out. Because what happens is one person, like I said, can be good, but to tell me that you're going to be the best programmer in the world and the best mixer in the world and the best mastering engineer, it's impossible. I mean, maybe there's some freak out there that totally destroys all of us that has some crazy gifted talent that defeats all of us, but most of us are not that person. So let's be honest with ourselves and say we can focus on one thing, maybe two things, and be great at them. But if you really, really, really want to jump up in the game, everybody you're going up against is a team. Very rarely is it a lone wolf sitting there doing everything by themselves. And unfortunately, that gets hard to compete with. It's like if you want to compete with Max Martin and Pop, one of the most successful producers, you're competing against a team of probably 20 plus people. If you want to compete against Howard Benson and rock, again, you're competing against a massive team of people, and all of them are the best in the world at what they do. Think about that for a second. Really hard for one person to come in and compete against 10 or 20. So let's bring this back down here to the smaller level. When I was producing local artists, I always thought to myself, like, oh, I need to do everything. If I lose a mix to somebody else, even though I produced it, that was like a personal ego hit and like a personal loss for me. And as I've gotten older and way more successful, I've realized I'm like, wow, I should have started collaborating, meaning finding people that I can outsource to, and then we can trade work together. It really, really works out great. So you might think you lose money at first, but it's like, let's just say you're recording local bands and you're a good producer and they don't have a lot of money. Maybe you can strike up a deal with a mixer who's much better at mixing than you, but they're not super famous or anything, and they'll work on a little bit of budget, and you can work out a special deal, or a mastering engineer or something where you're like, hey, I can get you a little bit of money. Can you get me great mixes? And I'll feed you a consistent volume of work. And now that person's doing your mixing for you. And guess what? Boom. You look better as a producer. Your quality is higher. And now you're attracting a lot more artists. You have a higher demand. Now you can raise your rates. I have seen this again and again and again. I have watched producers go from the local, regional level to the national level. And simply the difference, I mean, aside from skill and hard work and a little bit of luck, the major difference is they started working on teams. They started sourcing things out. They stopped taking every penny for themselves and instead started delegating things to people who were better than them. And as a result, guess what happened? Boom. Massive, massive, explosive career growth. If you start out with a mindset, I have to do everything, I will battle everyone to the death, you're competing. I understand that. Of course, we're all competing. That's part of nature. But if you come in with a mindset of collaboration and you open your mind to it and you look for ways to collaborate with other producers, guess what? That is going to open so many more doors for you so much quicker. You're going to find out exactly what you're great at, not just good at, and you're going to find ways to work and pass work around, and you'll end up making a lot more money by sharing. Telling you, it seems counterintuitive, but as somebody that lives it every day and has watched so many other people come up that have gone from zero to hero, I'm telling you right now, that's what you need to do. So hopefully that it gets you thinking. By the way, if you enjoy this content, please give me a like and subscribe and leave me a comment below and let me know if any of this helps you. That wraps up my top 4 things I wish I knew when I started producing and I started my career in audio. I hope that helps you. And of course, if you want to learn how to mix, check out nailthemix.com. Thank you so much for watching.